Dionysus, one of the 12 Olympians and the god of wine, was always accompanied by all sorts of divine creatures. These creatures had human and animalistic characteristics and drank wine and listened to music. Sounds interesting, right? Keep watching to find out who they were. The creatures we're talking about consist of fauns, Silenus, and satyrs. In essence, they are nature spirits. They are all masculine, unlike nymphs, who are all female. Although it isn't often obvious how these three unique things vary from one another, you can quickly tell them apart once you know what to look for. Now, let's dive deeper into their story. Satyrs and Faun. The satyrs were the wild spirits of Greek and Roman woodlands, with puckered noses, bristly hair, blossoming horns, and goat's ears. They had an animalistic look that was indicative of their bestial character. Typically described as clever and lustful, they pursued after nymphs, pulled sly pranks on men, and frolicked in the wild. They strongly connected to Dionysus, the Greek deity of wine, ecstasy, and agriculture, and they were an integral part of his festivals. In ancient Greek theater, satyr plays featured choruses of satyrs, with plenty of sexual references. They were tragic comedy and crudely humorous. For example, Marsyas was a well-known satyr killed for his arrogance after losing a musical duel with the deity Apollo. Like the satyrs, the fauns are legendary Roman beings that inhabit wild forests. They'd love to dance and play the flute and are followers of a god named Faunus. However, they are more cheerful and compassionate. Most people seem perplexed by this misconception that the word faun is just another name for a satyr, which is incorrect. There are some parallels between satyrs and fauns, but overall, these two groups of beings are very distinct in terms of both look and personality. It's a common misconception that satyrs and fauns are hybrids of man and goat, although some of the earliest stories of satyrs are closer to wild people than mythical animals. Most satyrs just strove to enjoy as much wine and nymph sex as possible. On the other hand, fauns were generally cheerful and peaceful animals. Yet they were also quite stupid and ignorant. Satyrs, in contrast, were far more restless and unhelpful. Pan and Panis. Pan, the god of shepherds, hunters, music, and the wild, among many other things, is unquestionably the most well-known satyr. Though not all poets seem to agree on his parenthood, Hermes and Penelope are frequently cited as his parents. However, this could also range from Zeus to any of the Arcadian nymphs. Pan was considered an older satyr, similar to Silenus, but he doesn't have many children that we would be able to recognize. Therefore, he is only acknowledged as the creator of his race. The term panic is believed to have its roots in the name Pan, since it is stated that Pan used to have a scream that, when heard, caused his adversaries to flee in terror. He used this when the giants attacked Mount Olympus and when he traveled with Dionysus to India. It's also reasonable to assume that this may have been the origin of the Roman notion that fauns should be feared. In one of the Zeus and Typhon tales, after Typhon had defeated Zeus, he took his tendons and ligaments, leaving Zeus injured and unable to defend himself. When all of the other gods and goddesses had fled in fear, it then felt Pan and Hermes retrieve these tendons, and so they did. Zeus would later go on to kill Typhon and end the Titan uprising. It is impossible to mention Pan without bringing up his connection to music and the invention of the pan flute. In this tale, he falls in love with a nymph named Syrinx and intends to confess his feelings to her when she gets home. But when she did, and Pan approached her, she didn't know Pan merely wanted to pay her a compliment and ran away as fast as she could. She rushed to her sisters, who changed her into a reed they had discovered in the river so that Pan would recognize her. Pan seized the reeds, making a beautiful tune as the wind blows into them, and assembled a group of reeds without knowing which one belonged to his beloved nymph. Then, after blowing into them, he created the first pan flute, which he had named after the love he had lost. The satyrs were frequently seen pursuing nymphs, and Pan often displayed similar behavior. The Panis, they are the children of Pan, were known to be the most significant influence on the faun. They had a man's torso and a goat's hooves, closer resembling the half-man, half-goat aesthetic that we've become accustomed to. Some even lack the majority of human characteristics in a goat's head. While the satyr we previously discussed were the followers of Dionysus, these Panis were strongly associated with Pan. The Panis were among the satyrs that accompanied Dionysus on the trip and in his war with India, according to Nonnus's epic poem Dionysiaca. Silenus and the Silenos. Silenus was one of the older satyrs, born from the earth with a father never mentioned. We can look at Gaia as one of these satyrs' main origins. When Silenus raised Dionysus from a newborn with the nymphs of Mount Nyssa, he was regarded as the original god of wine, a title he would eventually pass down to Dionysus. He then did what any good parent would do. He taught Dionysus the value and significance of drinking. So I think we know where his partying mindset originated. Silenus' overall impression is that he is a cheery elderly guy who enjoys nothing more than spending time with his favorite drinking buddy and stepson. He also played a vital role in the development of the legend of King Midas, since he and Dionysus were split apart after what we may imagine was a drunken night out. He later found himself wandering in the realm of King Midas, who recognized him and welcomed the satyr. Dionysus gave the monarch his golden touch when the two were reunited, and we all know how that story ends. The Silenos were the children of Silenus, and the mountain nymphs responsible for protecting Dionysus as a child. They were also regarded as spirits of winemaking because their father had ties to the wine. They also resembled the classic satyr in appearance, old chubby guys with a boarding head and a horse's tail. It was often tough to take them seriously because of the fluffy white hair occasionally covering their bodies. However, because of their general relationship between wine and women, they were frequently honored in the line of Dionysus. During these festivals, it wasn't unusual for individuals to dress as satyrs and put on plays. Greek mythology frequently depicts antagonistic relationships between specific individuals or entities, but since the satyr spends most of their time sipping wine and listening to music, it isn't easy to say. Of course, you could say they didn't like the giants all that much, but considering how much everyone despised or had a problem with them, it isn't saying much. During a brief conflict, the giant with 100 eyes, known as Argus Panoptes, killed numerous satyr. However, in this tale, he assisted the Arcadian people since the satyr robbed them of their animals. When Zeus went to war with the giants, the satyr were among the many who offered assistance riding into battle on their donkeys. Yes, they depended on donkeys. Maybe they were that drunk that they thought the donkeys were horses, or perhaps they were just so short that they couldn't possibly ride on horses. Regardless, the picture of a short drunk man riding a donkey reminds you of a dwarf. In some aspects, the personality of the satyr and dwarves are pretty similar. Still, while dwarves live underground in their mines making awesome weapons and jewels, the satyr prefer to run around the forest in their weird drunken orgies. Now, enough of connecting the dots. Let's end this video here. If you enjoyed watching it, make sure to hit the like and subscribe button. We'll see you next time. Until then, stay mythically mad.